Hi, there's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with a discussion on uncommons from the Pioneer format. So it's always been a practice of mine to not bulk out uncommons. I do bulk out commons. You can go back in our back room here at Gonor Games. You can see the 1,000 count boxes. We probably have 20,000 count boxes full of commons, but I try to keep my uncommons not bulked out. And in boxes, if you've seen some of my live streams and whatnot, you'll see that are behind me of where I'm here at my desktop. And the reason being is just for opportunities like this. You never know when an uncommon does see play in either Modern or Legacy or now Pioneer or even Commander, that they end up doing exactly what you're seeing with Wild Slash. They shoot up very quickly. Now, commons have a hard time of ever going up in value to any significant amount, but if you actually think back to some of the Modern cards that have broken out, like the Goblin, why am I thinking of the Goblin, the one that draws 4, discards 3. Those type of cards have a lot of potential. Manamorphose is a very expensive card when they do break out. And I think it's always a good idea to keep your uncommons for these opportunities. So this is what we're going to discuss. We're going to look at the most played uncommons right now in the Pioneer format and see where they have ended up and see if there's any opportunity to find other uncommons that could follow these sort of price increases. So the most played card right now in uncommon wise from the Pioneer format is Wild Slash. And you can see this went from a bulk card to a 25-cent card to a $5 card. The buy list prices are actually quite aggressive on this uncommon, with Card Keenum paying $2.25 and Channel Fireball at $2. And I'm sure those buy prices will continue to increase. Let's go and check the supply. Looks like Card Keenum is actually very low. They're out of stock of their very goods and EXs and have just 3 in stock total for their entire inventory for Wild Slash. So you can see that the Pioneer format has just absolutely taken off, in a card that was even out of not a dual deck, but an intro deck, as a 2 of an intro deck, has been able to go up to this price. I think these were in the intro decks, now I think about it too, from the format. So that's a pretty good tip too. If you can find the red-green intro decks from Fate Reforged, or if you can still find the Dragons of Tarkir event deck, both of those will have Wild Slashes in there. Don't quote me on the intro deck. I'm thinking, if I remember correctly, that was the one with wasn't it with was there a teamer one in that? Like, no, because these were just back to the 2 color. It was the one with Yosova. I swear it is. Yeah, the intro pack I do believe does have Wild Slashes in it. But again, don't quote me on that. But even with high supply is what I'm saying, from Fate Reforged, you can see an uncommon go from 35 cents to $4 in just a short amount of period of time. We've also seen Fatal Push now, which also was in a Challenger deck. Almost double in price from its low here, went from $3 to about $5. And again, the buy list prices have increased back again with the Fatal Push. This is a card where it should actually just continue to go down, even though it did see a lot of play in the Modern format. So that can give you kind of an idea of where the Frontier format is headed if 2 of these high supply uncommons can go up. So now let's just kind of take a look at some of the other uncommons that see a lot of play in Pioneer and where they are going. So the next one that had a huge price increase is Izzet Charm. Izzet Charm was another card that has been printed multiple times in Modern Masters, also in the guild kits and also in the dual decks. So the supply of this is quite high. And this card has also gone through the roof here. The Modern Masters copies are actually $3.50. The regular ones out of Ravnica are $2. And even the ones out of the guild kits are back up to $3.50. And the one out of the dual decks are also $2.50. So this one's also shot up. This one is a little bit in jeopardy because I think it has the most synergy with Treasure Cruise and is in the #1 deck of the Arclight Phoenix deck at the moment. So usually if a card is in the #1 deck, it's going to have more of a demand than if it were even in a #2 or #3 deck. The same as can be said about Commander. I've always looked at like Marin and the Atraxa, because anything goes in Marin and Atraxa automatically has a lot more value, even though it's only in one Commander deck, because of how popular those 2 Commander decks are. And so the same can be said about either Pioneer or Modern or even Standard at the time period. That not all decks are created equal, because the people that just see the results, they're going to want to build the best deck. They want to have the best chance to compete in their local scene, and they're going to copy and paste that particular deck. And so Phoenix is the #1 deck right now. You can also see that like Izzet Charms are going to follow suit and go up in value. Probably you're seeing it with the Lava Axe too. That's a card that didn't quite make this list. It wasn't quite on the top cards played for uncommons from the format. We can even see that standard cards have had a lot of increase from the Pioneer format. Noxious Grasp is one of the most played uncommons in the Pioneer format. This is also double dipping from standard, so the card is up to $1.87 for the Noxious Grasp, and I don't see this going anywhere. It's a very, very good card, with green being arguably the best color in Pioneer as well as in Standard, and so I think these are going to definitely hold their value, and they could easily, from Core 2020, be $3, $4, $5 by the end of the year if this trend continues. Now, the Oko banning possibly tomorrow could make the Noxious Grasp lose a lot of being played in the main of these decks in Standard, but I still think this is going to be a very strong card from now and beyond for Pioneer for the sideboard. It does have some cards that can compete with it, because there is one out of Dragonstruck here that does a similar effect, but it doesn't destroy Planeswalkers. And as long as I think that there is Teferi in any format, little Teferi and big Teferi, Noxious Grasp definitely is a very versatile card to throw in your sideboard. So this is another one that I definitely check your bulk bins, and just check if you have a lot of draft chaff that has been laying around, like you drafted in this time period, to start separating these out. Next one from Core 2020 is Fry. Core 2020 continues to be a good set just from the uncommons, with Veil of Summer getting the ban, and in my opinion, it probably will get the ban in Standard as well. Veil of Summer should come down, but there should be Veil of Summer being played in Legacy as well as in Modern. I don't see it getting banned in Modern. It's much more fair card in Modern than it is in Pioneer. And so with Fry, Noxious Grasp, and now with the Veil of Summer, I think the Core 2020 packs are pretty good, or boxes are a pretty good thing just to crack for value at this point. I think they're right on the edge if you can get them for a little bit under distributor price, where you could crack these and actually make out. And if Fries do go up in value, or Noxious Grasp goes in value, that is going to be the difference between them being profitable and not profitable. So let's take a look at some of these other cards. Searing Blood is starting to go in a lot of the mono red decks, at least in the sideboard. It's a very potent card. It does see play in Modern from time to time. 2 damage to a creature and then 3 damage to a creature control if you kill it. There are a lot of elves in this format. A ton of Jace, baby Jaces, a ton of elves that need to be taken care of early. This even will take care of a Phoenix and do 3 damage, so for whatever that's worth. There are a lot of Grim Flayers you need to take care of when they come out. A lot of cards in that 2 toughness spot. This Searing Blood is going to answer and do 3 damage. So most red decks that are aggressive decks are running these in the sideboard. I think this is a very good one to get in on. The foil price is high. The Card Kingdom spread between the TCG market price and Card Kingdom is about double, and Card Kingdom buy list is about half of the TCG market price. So that's a good indicator that this is also a card that is going to start going up. Modern Pressure alone had this card at about 80 cents before we did have that cooling off time period of Modern. And Pioneer, I think this is just a sleeper before we see this one being $1.50, possibly even $2-3. If the red decks, which they are starting to take a lot more than meta share, continue to see play. Next up, we have Chart a Course. This was a card that got all the way up to $3 in Standard, and it is going back up. It cooled off about 35 cents, so it's doubled up. This is another card that does see play in the various Thing in the Ice and Arclight Phoenix decks. With Treasure Cruise getting banned, I still foresee Arclight Phoenix and Arclight Phoenix and Thing in the Ice decks being viable, because there are plenty of other things you can just throw in that Treasure Cruise slot. In fact, Treasure Cruise oftentimes is an awkward card in the deck because it's tough to cast. There have been many games where I needed any spell but Treasure Cruise and had 3 of them stuck in my hand, and that ends up being kind of a feels bad scenario. So it still is incredibly potent. I don't think it's backbreaking, though, if they do ban Treasure Cruise, that Arclight Phoenix and Thing in the Ice go away. So Chart a Course, I think, is another smart card just to make sure that you have these pieces. I think that when the dust settles, this will be another $1.50, $2 card. And again, these can be profitable when the buy lists actually come up to where you purchase them at. So say you got in for a quarter, you can sell it for Card Kingdom. That's a pretty good payday at that point for doubling up a quarter card with very little effort, just sending it to one vendor. Next up, we have Winding Constrictor. There are a lot of decks that are running Winding Constrictor. The one thing that Winding Constrictor doesn't have going for it was in the Challenger decks as a 4 of. However, Hardened Scales are huge. A lot of Hardened Scales, Winding Constrictor decks in the meta. And it is a card that survives Wild Slash and Searing Blood for that matter. And if it stays around a turn, it gets a lot of value off both Rishkar and Walking Ballista. So that's a very popular deck. what you're seeing with Pioneer is people taking a lot of their favorite decks they played in Standard in a nostalgic way and then adding to them. And that's really what I like about Pioneer is there doesn't really seem to be as many busted, just completely slot-breaking cards. What I mean by that is the best 2-drop, the best 3-drop, the best 4-drop, like you see in Modern. In Modern, you look at something like Tarmogoyf and like, yep, playing that. I'm not going to play this other card like Tarmogoyf because Tarmogoyf is just strictly better. And what it's created in Modern is this situation with some of these cards that had bad designs, that aren't quite good enough to get banned, that are format-defining cards, that they don't want to ban because of how they think it will have a negative impact on the format, are just going to stick around forever. And I think Pioneer, with what they call the New World Order, or how they started designing sets about, I can't remember when they started that, but really Return to Ravnica forward is when they put a better balancing set design on it. I know people are going to scoff at that with Oko just being printed, but that seems to be the exception rather than the rule. And if you go Return to Ravnica sets especially, there was definitely the best cards out of sets and nothing came close to it. But Pioneer, I'm thinking there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of cards you can justify playing in their slots. And cards like Winding Constrictor are exactly this. They're going to go in specific decks that there can be huge payoffs if this survives. And there will be plenty of these decks that are going to run Winding Constrictor to make this card go up to $1, $2 when the dust settles, in my opinion. So again, we have Card Kingdom paying about 20 cents, which is pretty good for a card that was a 4 of in a Challenger deck that had a huge supply. We have Stubborn Denial, which is also another good card, in my opinion. It did go up quite a bit when it did start to see a lot of play in the Death Shadow era. I think this is right when LSV called that Death Shadow would need something banned from it because the Claim to Fame, LSV made a prediction that Claim to Fame would break Death Shadow in the format. Did not end up seeing any play in the format. However, Death Shadows still continue to see a lot of play in this time period. And you see Stubborn Denial going to about $1.50, and it's cooled off since then. Well, Pioneer, it's one of the most played uncommons, and it's starting to go up in value because of that in Solar Artifact decks. Lots of decks can easily cheat this out. To where you have a ferocious card and then just flat out counter a non-creature spell. And if nothing else, it's a nice little force spike in the format for non-creature spells. Kind of a got you card where your opponent taps out for a Teferi and you just counter it. It's a pretty good card in the format. Gets better with ferocious. Alrighty, so this one also has a nice little buy list or spread versus the market price in the Card Kingdom, almost being twice as much. One of these is going to have to give. Card Kingdom buy list is pretty low at the moment. I think there is a lot of supply of this card just because it is from Khans of Tarkir and it was a modern played card. There wasn't a number one deck that cooled off, meaning that a lot of the vendors still have plenty of these that they particularly haven't like bulked out or sold. That's one of the things with Pioneer, like Wild Slash, for example, is there wasn't vendors that were like sitting on these. They weren't actively buying them, and so they didn't have the supply ready to sell. This is one of those cards, Stubborn Denial, that they did have the supply ready to sell with the Pioneer format, so it's going to take a little bit longer for it to the supply to be outstretched by the demand. Gifted Aetherborn is another one that I expect to go up in price. This card was mainly a casual card that saw a lot of play. It occasionally does see modern play, and it was a casual favorite, commander favorite as well. Death Touch Lifelink for 2/3 gets the double devotion to black. This is another card again that had the supply there for the vendors to sell into the demand, but as soon as that gets outstretched, I think the Gifted Aetherborn easily could be that $3-4 uncommon. Next up, we have Experiment 1. Experiment 1 does have a lot of printing because it was in both the Commander 2015 as well as the Ravnica Legion skill kits. And this is also another card that has seen play from time to time in Modern. And so, as I said earlier with the past two cards, vendors had these. They were actively still buying these because of it did have some Modern demand and casual demand, Commander demand. However, with the Stompy being very, very represented in the meta, and plus almost one counters also being very represented in the meta, I think Experiment 1 is going to be another card that is going to increase in value. We have Card Kingdom paying 60 cents. We have the TC market price and Card Kingdom spread getting very, very slim. Next up that I think is going to be a breakout card, did have the Masters 25 printing, so 2 printings, is a Nyx Fleece Ram. The red decks are getting very, very... It's funny, when Pioneer started, there definitely were some non-Frontier decks that broke out. Frontier was really dominated by Sealy Combo, Aetherworks Marvel, but Atarka Red was probably the most dominant deck throughout the history of Frontier. I've been following it. I wasn't really into Frontier just because it's pointless being involved in a format that's not supported by Wizards. You need the parent company to make the tournaments for cards to go up in value, for the demand to be there, because people are going to go where the trophies are. And if they're going to be doing Grand Prix for Pioneer, people are going to go to them. So Nyx Fleece Ram was not legal in the Frontier format. Now here's a card that is a huge roadblock because that 0/5 is quite the obstacle to overcome for red decks. So now with like Teferi or something like Reflector Mage or even like Spell Queller, those type of cards that have good tempo, and you have a 2-drop like Nyx Fleece Ram that is going to be that roadblock on that turn. This can basically gain you life that turn for blocking creatures and then start residually gaining life. I think it's going to be a very, very potent card. I'm thinking Enchantress-based decks are very close to breaking out in Pioneer. Life gain decks are also pretty close to breaking out, and Toughness Matters decks could easily be a thing because there's quite a few cards that do allow you to use toughness as power, like the Planeswalker out of War of the Spark. I believe there's an enchantment that does it as well out of Dragons of Tarkir. And so the 0/5 on that could easily go in a deck. So Nyx Fleece Ram is one of those cards that I really like because it's a matter of when, not if, the card actually does see play in Pioneer and one of these other archetypes I mentioned. And then factor that in, it's a great card to slot in from the sideboard against aggressive decks, and you just have a card that is poised to go up. Market price is actually above the mid, meaning that this is being sold quicker. This means there's a lot of cards that are just one-ofs that can't really fulfill a cart reasonably with the shipping costs. And the buy list price is starting to increase also on Card Kingdom. Speaking of Reflector Mage, this is another card that I do believe is going to go up in value. I think that the tempo-based decks, one of the better decks that I've seen with results is just your old school Reflector Mage Smuggler Copter deck that ended up having to be banned in Standard. It's still a really potent curve in the Pioneer meta. And so Reflector Mage also goes in the Coco decks. And I think this price point's a bit low. The market price in mid are razor thin. The Card Kingdom price is increasing, and the Card Kingdom buy price is actually quite steep for an uncommon at 72 cents. So this is another card I think is well positioned to go kind of the Fatal Push Wild Slash range. Dovin's Veto. This is a card that has a lot of supply recently from War of the Spark, but this is also starting to see a ton of lists. An uncounterable counterspell in the Counterspell Wars. If control starts to take over more of the meta now with Veil of Summer being banned, you can see this one being the kind of mirror breaker. I've also seen a lot of white weenie decks, or just the mentioned deck, the Reflector Mage deck, that are white splash blue. That's also a very potent strategy. You get a bunch of 2/1s out early, and then you establish a big board state, and then the entire thing is in protecting your board state against cards that then wipe your board. Dovin Veto doesn't work at Supreme Verdict, but if you are in a Counterspell War, this is one of the better cards. Another card that sees a lot of play in Modern Legacy. Very, very good card. Sees play in Standard too, so I'm thinking this is a low price point for the Dovin's Veto. And last but not least, we have Azorius Charm. This one also has some printings in Iconic Masters and the Guild kits, but it's really starting to see a lot of play in these control decks just because the cycle ability for drawing a card for 2 mana and then putting attacking or blocking creature is exactly what you want. Works good with dig through time decks. It puts that card in the graveyard for then you to dig for your answer, and it does everything you want right now in the format of putting a huge stompy creature back on top of its library. It can still even target the questing beast type cards or the Steel Leaf Champions, put them back on top of the library, screws up their curve, or if your opponent doesn't do anything, you just cycle it away and draw a card. It also does have the ability to give all your creatures lifelink, which is relevant in certain control decks where they are running like a couple creatures, like the Dragonlord Ojutai. I've seen it in those type of lists. So I think this one's very undervalued at the moment. Iconic Masters did have a ton of supply. However, this is another card where the market price mid is very thin, and Card Kingdom is actually starting to buy them now, meaning there is a lot of inventory swing in the Azorius Charm. So that's kind of a few of the uncommons I've checked over in the format. And again, we're looking for these wild slash type cards. Yeah, life might be too short to look at commons, but uncommons in a format like Frontier do have a lot of potential, especially from some of these sets that might not have been opened as much. We're looking at Core 2020 especially. And Dragon's Dark here had some interesting ones too, of the hate cards out of Dragon's Dark here. They had some pretty good ones. Another ones that didn't make the list, like Blessed Alliance, started to see a lot more Blessed Alliance, Lightning Axes, lots of Lightning Axes out there. And many, many, many more uncommons are starting to be pillars to the format. I think this is a very good time as a whole in the Frontier or in the Pioneer format to start investing in these particular cards. Hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, your comments are more than welcome in the comment section below. If you want up-to-date videos, definitely click that bell icon. I notice there isn't a lot of people that do click the bell. Sometimes I do give out up to the minute like alerts. And if you are interested in more of the market discussion, definitely come out and check my Patreon. Any patrons, even a $2 a month, is eligible for our Discord. And we talk a lot of specs and a lot of market talk there on the Discord. And I think it's worth it at that price, even at the low end. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.